I don't owe nothing. He got all his songs already. How you think he got so hot? Came out with all them tapes. I did that. I put them hooks together. Yeah. I made incredible music. All he did was rhyme 16s.
Well, you know,
I made incredible. I made the hooks. I made the melodies.
Yes.
I made the.
Max B didn't just fall out with Jim Jones. Their beef twisted into something so personal, so messy, and so deep in betrayal that people still argue about what really happened. The part most fans never saw is how fast things changed when money, loyalty, and desperation collided. One minute, Max was Jim's secret weapon, the voice behind the wave that had Harlem jumping. The next, he was calling Jim a thief, a snake, and someone who built his success on another man's talent. And behind all that noise, there were fights, broken contracts, street confrontations, ruined friendships, and a murder case that changed everything. Let's go back to the moment the wave first crashed.
So Jim Jones, compare the names. Look, Max Bigavel, Jim Jones. That don't even add up. That's not on my level, man.
Before the bitterness, before courtroom drama, before diss tracks and parking lot chaos, Max B and Jim Jones were tight. People around them said it felt like they were cut from the same Harlem cloth. Loud personalities, hustler mindsets, same ambition to break out of the streets. Max B, born Charlie Wingate, came up in the Abraham Lincoln Projects. His childhood wasn't steady. His mom dealt with addiction and prison time, so his grandmother was the one keeping him grounded. Even then, the streets grabbed him early. He had a voice though, literally. He sang in the boys' choir of Harlem, where that melodic tone first started taking shape. By the time he hit adulthood, trouble kept finding him. In 1997, he got caught in a robbery case and spent around 8 years in prison. When he walked out in 2005, he was sharper, hungrier, and carried himself like someone who already knew exactly who he wanted to be. He called himself Max Bigavelli, a mix of Biggie, Jigga, and Machiavelli, and he truly believed he had all three in him. Meanwhile, Harlem was Dipset country. Cameron and Jim Jones had the city locked down. Through Cameron, Max met Jim, and immediately the chemistry was real. Jim had the platform, Max had the sound. Dame Grease stepped in with production, and suddenly everything clicked.
Your name is Max B, aka Max Bigavel. We know Bigavel stands for Big Jig and Pac, right? But where did the name...
Big Machiavelli, baby.
Yeah.
Big Jig and Machiavelli.
When Max dropped $1 Million Baby in 2006, the streets responded instantly. That wavy melodic talk, nobody else had it like him. With stack bundles in the mix, ByrdGang looked unstoppable. But even while the music was heating up, cracks were already forming. From the outside, Max and Jim looked like a dream team. But inside, there were questions mainly about credit and money. Max believed he created the hooks, the melodies, the energy, and he didn't hide that feeling. You can hear it in old interviews where he says things like, "I did the hooks, I made incredible music. All he did was rhyme 16s." Whether that's fully true or not, what matters is that Max believed it. And once he felt underpaid and undervalued, the whole foundation started shaking. Then the streets got involved, not musically, but literally.
Boyfriend Charlie Wingate, aka Max B, a rapper, about the men's money. Then Wingate reaches out to this man, Calvin Leardom.
In September 2006, Max got pulled into the situation that would eventually derail his entire career. His ex, Gina Conway, told him about a guy named Allan Plowden, flashy, reckless with money, and allegedly caught up in some fraud schemes. According to Gina's later testimony, she claimed Max hinted they could hit a lick and everybody would eat. Details around this moment are still argued to this day. But what's confirmed is this. Gina and Max's stepbrother, Calvin Leardom, ended up at a Holiday Inn in New Jersey where Plowden was staying. They were supposed to go in while he was out, grab the cash, and leave. Instead, they got lost, showed up too late, and found Plowden asleep in the room with another woman. A man named David Taylor walked in unexpectedly. Kelvin panicked and fired. Taylor died instantly. The entire plan blew up in seconds. Gina folded first. When she got caught, she gave police a statement over 160 pages long, pinning Max as the one who planned everything. Whether that was true or not, that testimony became the anchor that prosecutors held on to.
It all began the morning of September 22nd at the Fort Lee Holiday Inn. Police are called there after a man is shot to death. The victim, David Taylor from Florida, was staying in room 227.
Max got hit with a $2 million bail and sat in jail for almost a year. And while he was locked up, Jim Jones dropped We Fly High, the biggest record of his career. Max B claimed he wrote it. Jim denied it. Reference tracks and studio stories floated around that made fans question everything. This is where the relationship snapped. When Max's bail dropped to 90 grand, Jim stepped in, but reportedly only if Max signed over his publishing and locked himself into a 6-album deal under Jim. Max later described it like he had no choice. He signed the papers to get out, but the resentment was instant. He walked out of jail free but broke. Meanwhile, Jim owned everything tied to Max's voice. That's when Max knew the friendship was dead. Max didn't waste time once he split from ByrdGang. He connected with French Montana, who at the time was still deep in his Cocaine City DVD grind, filming street corners, interviewing whoever was buzzing, and building his name from the ground up. French Montana wasn't a mainstream artist yet, but he understood movement and he understood how fast energy could spread when the streets believed in you. Max saw that hunger. Montana saw Max's raw talent, and they bonded almost instantly. Both of them felt the same thing: overlooked, boxed out, talked down on by people with bigger positions.
Got him in his drive already. I don't owe nothing. He got all his songs already. How you think he got so hot? Came out with all them tapes. I did that. I put them hooks together. I made incredible music. All he did was rhyme 16s. Well, you know, I made the hooks. I made the...
That shared frustration turned into chemistry, and out of that chemistry came Coke Wave. Not just a duo, but a mindset. A pushback against the industry and against anyone who tried to control their future. The moment they linked up, the war with Jim officially started. Max fired first through the music. Not hints, not coded messages, direct hits. Public Domain 3 dropped with a cover that told the whole story before you even pressed play. Max standing in a graveyard with tombstones labeled Millie Jim Jones and Vanilli Joel Santana. People couldn't believe how bold it was. He wasn't just calling them out, he was calling them imposters living off the sound he created. He followed up with tracks like Lip Sing and I Know These Dudes Need Me. Records that made it clear Max felt he was the backbone of the whole operation. The delivery was playful and sarcastic, but the message underneath cut deep. And Max didn't limit his shots to the booth. In interviews and street DVDs, he talked about Jim's personal life, dropping stories that instantly turned into neighborhood gossip. Whether every detail was true or not, the way Max told them made it impossible for people to forget. The streets fed on it. Jim tried dismissing him. He called Max bitter, said he never blew up, said he didn't owe him anything. But the fans had already heard early reference tracks floating around with Max's vocals on them. People started questioning who built what inside ByrdGang, and the more Jim downplayed it, the louder the conversations got. Then things drifted away from music completely. Max claimed Jim tried setting him up in a parking lot, said Jim blocked him in, tried to trap him, and got more than he expected when Max rammed his Bentley and punched him before peeling off. It sounded wild, but more than one person close to Max backed the story, and Max repeated it more than once like it was something he wasn't afraid to stand on.
Just enough to get my room so I could ram it up in. Right? My window was there, he tried to grab it. So when he came in the window, I punched him in the face.
By late 2008, Max and French took it further and walked into a Manhattan studio building where Jim was recording. They didn't sneak in or hide, they came straight through the front. Max later claimed Jim panicked and called the police. Whether that was exactly how it happened or not, it didn't help Jim's image in a culture where calling the cops carried a heavy reputation hit. Around that same time, their crews ran into each other at a club in Brooklyn, and everything fell apart instantly. Fists flying, chairs moving through the air, security scrambling, police and K9 units storming in. It wasn't just rap beef anymore. It was two entire circles clashing whenever the wrong people ended up in the same room. By that point, nobody could pretend the tension was part of entertainment. It was personal, loud, and growing by the day. And then came the moment that shut the whole wave down. On June 9, 2009, Max walked into court like he still believed he could beat the case. People who were there said he carried himself with the same calm confidence he had in interviews, like he trusted the jury to see the gaps in Gina's story. His lawyers claimed they pulled her testimony apart during cross-examination, pointing out the moments where she changed small details or where her timeline didn't match earlier statements. They painted her as someone acting out of fear and frustration, not someone delivering a clear version of events. But the courtroom didn't move on street logic, and it didn't move on loyalty. It moved on the prosecution's simple, clean narrative. They said Max came up with the plan, Gina carried it out, Kelvin pulled the trigger, and Max expected to profit. They never had to place him in the room. In a felony murder case, being connected to the planning was enough. Once the jury accepted that structure, everything else slid into place. When the verdict came in, 9 of 11 counts, it felt like the entire story snapped shut in one moment. Felony murder, armed robbery, kidnapping, conspiracy. All stacked, all heavy, all tied to a situation where Max wasn't physically present but legally responsible.
Right around that time, Max B gets found guilty on 9 of 11 counts, including felony murder. And he gets sentenced to, was it 75 years?
Yeah, 75.
By September, the sentence landed 75 years, earliest chance at parole in 2042. The kind of number that doesn't feel real the first time you hear it. For fans on the outside, it was like watching someone's entire future disappear in a single afternoon. But the punishment didn't stop at the cell door. Even locked up, Max didn't own his work. Jim Jones still held control over his publishing. The hooks, the melodies, the early songs that built the ByrdGang sound. Every time a mixtape DJ ran an old Max verse, every time someone streamed one of those early records, Jim was the one getting paid. And when Jim spoke on Max publicly, he talked like the story was over. He described him as someone who burned out early, someone who didn't maximize his chances. To fans, it felt cold. To Max, it felt like everything he built was being passed around without him. But even in that moment, with the sentence, the lost publishing, and the industry moving on, the wave didn't die. If anything, it started spreading in ways nobody expected. Even locked up, Max's influence kept spreading. His sound, that loose, melodic street talk, showed up everywhere. Artists who were teenagers when Max got sentenced started using his style without even knowing where it came from. The blueprint for a whole wave of melodic rap quietly traced back to him. French Montana kept his name alive the most. Anytime a camera was in his face, French mentioned Max. DJs kept sliding old Max vocals into mixes the same way people treat rare vinyl. And online, fans treated every leaked snippet like a new chapter in a story they refused to let end. Then in 2010, everything shifted. A judge ruled that Max had fulfilled the terms of both contracts he'd signed with Jim. That meant something people had been arguing about for years was finally official. Jim no longer owned Max's future. Max was still behind a wall, but from a business standpoint, he wasn't chained to anyone anymore. That alone changed how fans looked at him. It felt like the first real win he'd had in years. The next year, he dropped Vigilante Season, and the streets treated it like a lost treasure. Hearing Max glide over those beats reminded people exactly why he mattered.
Originally, you were sentenced to 75 years. But then, last July, you said he got reduced to 20 years and then to 12 years.
You could hear pieces of his cadence in artists who were blowing up at the time. Even the slang, waves, vibes, that smooth bounce delivery, all of it traced back to what Max had been doing years earlier. Then 2016 came with the biggest twist of all. Max's new legal team dug into his old case and argued that his original lawyer didn't just make mistakes, he failed him completely. The judge agreed, and Max's 75-year sentence was vacated. After a plea deal, that number dropped to 20, and later to 12. Suddenly, after almost a decade of thinking he might never see the streets again, Max had a real release date. November 9th, 2025. For the first time in a long time, it felt like the wave wasn't fading. He was coming home. As 2026 gets closer, Max talks like a man who's lived through enough chaos to finally want quiet. In recent interviews and phone calls, he describes himself as a father first, an artist second, and someone who's trying to make up for the years he lost. He says the old anger doesn't sit on him the way it used to. The way he puts it, he's not interested in reliving the past unless it helps him move forward. People close to him say he's calmer, more reflective, and focused on keeping his circle tight when he comes home. Jim Jones, on the other hand, has stayed mostly silent whenever Max's name comes up. He's made peace with French Montana, they even dropped music together. But when the conversation shifts to Max, Jim keeps it short. He said he doesn't wish Max harm, but he also isn't pretending everything can be patched up with a handshake. To Jim, the damage was real, and the past is something he'd rather not reopen, especially with how public and messy everything became. What complicates things is how much both men shaped the sound of that mid-2000s era. Fans still debate who contributed what, who deserved credit, and who was responsible for the fallout. Depending on who you ask, the story plays out differently. But after nearly 2 decades, the emotion is still there. Old interviews and clips still circulate online, keeping the tension alive even when neither of them is actively fanning the flames. Whether Max and Jim ever sit in the same room again is something nobody can predict. Maybe time smooths out the edges, maybe the moment never comes. But their story reached a point where it stopped being just a rap beef. It became a lesson in trust, ambition, business, and what happens when friendship gets tangled in money and pressure. And when Max finally steps out, all eyes will be on Harlem to see what comes next. Reconciliation, distance, or something none of us expect. So what do you think? Does Max B come home and rewrite his whole story? Or does the old tension with Jim Jones stay buried forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you're new here, make sure you subscribe for more deep dive stories just like this one.